There we go. Hi, everybody. Dionne Mejer here with Revenue by Design. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. And we are here today talking about Lead with Soul, our Success Stories series. And as you can imagine, that's a mouthful. We have with us today Jeanine Adams. She's a leadership coach. Her background in leadership coaching as well as operational excellence is unmatched and unparalleled. She was also kind enough and generous enough with her time to be interviewed for my upcoming book, Lead with Soul. And I wanted to give her and others the chance to share with us in real time some of her success stories and how leading with soul and having this leadership methodology and operating rhythm allowed her and her teams to be amazingly successful in her time. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is really give the opportunity to amplify what she's doing, how she's doing it, and how leading with soul has really brought forth tremendous amount of results, not only for herself, but for her team as well. So Jeanine, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been a true pleasure to get to know you.
Same, Dionne. We had a little conversation beforehand, and I want to give you some kudos publicly. Just the people that you've curated in your research really speaks a lot to the kind of culture you're trying to create out there in the world, not just in your small microcosm, but also beyond. And so I'm excited, even though I've had a preview of your book, I'm excited about actually being able to dig in. I've had the opportunity to listen to some of the others speak and go through this conversation with you. And I'm just beyond thrilled to be, number one, included in that crowd, but number two, to have the opportunity to dig in a little bit further with each of them. So thank you for creating this space.
You bet. Absolutely, Jeanine. And we're going to dive in. I have to say this one thing really quick too, where I'm reading the book Call to Courage. I think it's downstairs, and it's written by Ryan Holiday, who's kind of writing the Stoics versions of books out there, right? And it's amazing what is in that book. So if you're looking for a book to read and maybe courage at the end of the day, it's a really good one. And I think that's what this is. And Jeanine, you and I were talking about it, where, there's nothing wrong with money. And I want to be really clear about that. There's nothing wrong with being successful. There's nothing wrong with being competitive. There's nothing wrong with any of that, right? So for my fellow Christian friends out there, like, the Bible talks about money more than it talks about nearly anything else. Because like anything, let me back up. I firmly believe that money makes us more of who we already are. And so if we're somebody who is stingy, more money isn't going to cure stinginess, right? And so the whole point, I say that to say that the whole point of Lead with Soul is to give voice to the leaders who shared the love of winning and shared the love of success and being competitive. I am super competitive. I firmly believe that I will beat anybody, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Whatever, you know what I mean?
Right. Now, absolutely.
But you have to have a belief that you're going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that we live in a day and age of C is for combat, right? We are in combat to win in every area of our life. The point of Lead with Soul is to amplify the voices and the stories of those that have done that and done it well, and quite frankly, without being an ass. Because it's easy to go the other way. It's easy, and we've all been there, where I just interviewed, had Jeff Nixon on talking about it's easy to lead with command and control, but we're not bringing our people along for the ride. And that is what Lead with Soul is all about, is we can be great. We can work on ourselves. We can be a one-woman show, but we're not bringing our team and, quite frankly, our organization along for the ride.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's what we want to talk about today. So Jeanine, thank you for being with us today. And I won't read your entire bio. I mentioned it before. You are an excellent leadership coach. You are a fractional operations specialist. You help leaders filter out the noise and get clear on what matters and build a process or business that works. You've spent your career helping organizations untangle the mess between vision and execution and bringing calm to chaos and heart to strategy. So, thank you for joining us today. And tell us a little bit about, so with that, we're going to segue into share with us a story from your own journey of what it meant to lead with soul and tell us what happened.
Thank you. It's funny, Dionne, when you look back at your career, and I'm sure anybody who's listening, and you included, have had this experience when you try to boil down to one experience or one moment in time, there's so many that you
Yes,
can choose from, which is exciting to be able to say that we've had these rich and storied careers that have given us a lot to talk about.
100%.
And isn't that why we're here? And so one of them that just really stands out for me, because it's not about metrics, it's not about the hard science of things that we talk about when we talk about corporate success. Instead, it truly is about the human aspect.
Mhm.
And I like it so much because it resulted in the hard aspects. It resulted in more success from a monetary standpoint, from a quality standpoint. And so I was in this industry that wasn't new to me. However, the side that I was on, so I've been in the mortgage industry for a very long time, have been on multiple sides, the customer service piece of after we've sold the mortgage, we are now, delivering. And so my team did customer service. Then I was on the front end where, we're underwriting, closing, and processing files, and then moved to, I'm going to say, the very back end side. I don't know if I thought that just magically when a loan closed, it just went off into some Ethernet or whatever happened. But I now got to peek behind the kimono, as they say, and see the underbelly of when those documents are, signed and executed and all the things, what happens to them. So I was in the title company and on the post-closing side in a place that I just really had never been before and never, I'm curious about it, quite honestly, but I inherited this team because one of the president of the company just recognized that based on what he'd seen me do in other places, he felt like this Bad News Bears team needed a little bit different. Instead of, continuing to hammer them over the head with, you've lost checks, you've done this wrong, you're doing that wrong.
It
They were
doesn't.
based on scapegoats. And
Yeah.
I can tell you that for the first 2 months, I didn't spend time looking at the numbers because I knew they were crap. I
Mhm.
didn't
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
all of the quality measures that we missed, all of the metrics that weren't getting met. Instead, I spent time getting to know every single person on that floor.
Yeah.
If they were there 14 hours, that was a short day. I mean, it was long, long days because this is in COVID, during, COVID era. And quite honestly, the mortgage business boomed. It
Yeah.
absolutely boomed during that time. And so there was a lot of refinances because people were staying in their homes. They weren't moving. The rates, they were taking advantage of the rates. And so unprecedented volume with this team that just couldn't get their act together.
Yeah.
So like I said, 14-hour days, commonplace, 18-hour days. And so I was shoulder to shoulder with everybody else, learning about them, pushing them in different ways because I knew more. I knew more about whose mom was homesick, whose kids, weren't able to go to school and they were struggling because this is their senior year in high school and they weren't going to graduate with the rest of their buddies, all of those kind of stories. And so we started to become cohesive. We started to actually gel as a team. And once we gelled as a team because of those stories and that intimate relationship, and I also, by the way, learned the process, learned where the gaps were. I was able to see them because I was an outsider. I wasn't coming in and saying, this is the way we've always done it. I don't understand why it's not working. Right. Instead, I was able to go, well, why do we? I was very curious. Curiosity is my favorite thing, asking the questions and going, Now, why do we do it that way?
Yeah.
And have somebody trying to, explain like, well, we do it that way because of this, like, understood, but I'm new here. Help me understand.
Yeah.
Why are we doing it this way?
Yep. Yep.
Kind of slowing it down, which seems counterintuitive,
Yep.
because if you're slowing it down, we need to go fast, fast, fast. But it was helpful. All of that came together in this really beautiful way. And I think I've told you this before, where it was so funny because checks weren't going lost anymore. Files were getting where they needed to be in a shorter turnaround time. People were leaving earlier because they could, because the work was getting done. It just happened, I want to say organically, but it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of hours put in. It was a lot of relationships being built. It was a lot of relationships being repaired. It was a lot of reputations being repaired. And as a result, cut to 6 months later, when something would go wrong or a check would go missing, we were the end of the road. And so instead of the president or somebody else automatically blaming and going, oh, it got lost in post-close, it was, oh no, it never got to post-close because Jeanine runs a tight ship down there. There's no way. There's no way it ever happened. And, sure enough, you'd follow the trail and it never got to post-close or something else happened to it. And so the reputation was, did a full 180 or a 360. I never know what really goes there. Maybe we were going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In a better direction.
It was transformed.
Transformed.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's one of my favorite stories because, again, it really didn't start out as the numbers. It started out instead as curiosity and going, how can I learn about where the pain points are, not only with the people because they were struggling, but also with the process. And then as a result of understanding those two things, being able to come at it from a different perspective, I enjoyed saying, I'm new here, help me understand. And I continued to do that throughout my career at that particular company because everybody was so comfortable always doing it the way they always had. Yeah. And then having somebody, an outsider, genuinely come in with that curiosity and not I don't know why you're doing it that way.
Yeah.
Mentality helped.
Yeah.
And so I find that is one of my best skills, to play dumb.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the fact that you said, I'm new here, please help me. So I'm going to zoom out for a second, Jeanine, because one of the things that we talk about in the book, and one of the questions to you and all the interviewees was, what are your top principles and values? And I think there's a chart in the book, right, to kind of get people, give them a jump start. And I think one of the things that you said was curiosity. And my favorite quote from you, there were many, but the one that really stuck with me was, don't weaponize the numbers, use them to ask better questions. And when I hear you talk, it's always about curiosity, the characteristic and embodiment of being curious. How did you get there? Because that's what Lead with Soul also wants to solve is we want to bring to life people's how, right? We can read the books, right? I can read, but sometimes what we're not after is more knowledge. What we're after is how do we operationalize our knowledge? So how did you make that transition from, I need to be curious to I am curious?
Sure. I mean, it's weird because what I would tell you is it's probably how I was raised. My sister and I literally had this conversation last night where we were talking about our vocabulary. And we both, just use words and assume that everybody else knows these words. It's just the way we are. But it's because when we were kids, anytime we didn't know something or we would ask my dad something, even if it was easy to answer and maybe he didn't even know the answer, but he automatically would say, look it up. You've got dictionaries, you've got an encyclopedia. I'm from I grew up in the era of hardback, encyclopedias.
Amen.
And so that's what we did. He did not just give us answers. We would have to go and find the answer. And probably at the time, like, Dad, but now as a grown woman, right? Just tell me. As a grown woman, there's that whole teach a man to fish and he, eats forever. And so it's that kind of lesson that I value so deeply. And I've been around, and I know you have as well, leaders who do not act with humility.
Mhm.
They act with bravado at
Yeah.
all times, and it is overbearing.
Yeah.
And while I might know the answer, if I just tell you the answer, that does not help you. It maybe gets me there quicker, but it doesn't help you. And
Correct.
so that's just kind of, again, the way I was raised. And when I've seen the opposite, it's not what I want to be or who I want to be. And so I've embraced it. Now, with that being said, I don't always get it right, Dionne. I don't
No,
always get it right.
none of us
There
do.
are times when quick has to take precedence.
Yeah.
And, here's what we need to do, and let's just keep it moving. There are many times when that is truthful. So understanding the difference and knowing when. I wish I could tell you there's this magic, oh, here's my formula.
Yeah.
But
No, there isn't one.
there's
No.
just not.
No, I think that's really powerful too, Jeanine, because you were I think what I hear you talking about is this quiet confidence. And how do we build confidence? We build confidence by keeping our promises to ourselves and others.
Yes.
And it's that simple. And so I love the fact that you're talking about quiet confidence because yeah, we've at our launch party we did. When was that? I don't even remember. End of December, beginning of January. But I share the origin story for myself of why I started down this journey. Because I want to be a great leader because I've been on the receiving end of both, and I am going to get it wrong, right? I think if you don't get it wrong, you're not trying hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I hear you saying too is the quiet confidence comes from just even trying, number one, and number two, having your own, again, I call it the leadership methodology of I'm going to try. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to be able to address it and acknowledge it to repair the relationship. So talk a little bit about kind of how you got to that phase of your journey.
Absolutely. I have this great memory of this superior. She was a boss of mine. She was a direct boss. And I was in my 20s. And I remember the company that I worked for at the time was a leadership training company. And I had been there for probably 5 to 7 years before she got there. And I, in my 25-year-old brain, figured I knew a lot more than she did.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? So she came in and was going to be my boss. And I felt like I was training her on the things that she should know, kind of mentality. And I'm embarrassed now when I think about it, but it is one of those steps along the way that I consider a pivotal moment, because one of the things that she recognized in her maturity, who she's probably like my age at the time now, but she pulled me aside one day and she just said, I don't know if I've somehow offended you. I didn't mean to. And I recognize that you've got so much information that I need. And so I want to ask you, you don't have to reveal if I pissed you off or whatever, but I've got this little statue and I still have the statue. She said, I've got this little statue and I'm going to give it to you. And I want you to know that my intention is always pure. And if there's ever a time that you can ask yourself, or you can answer the question of, do I think that Sharon was trying intentionally to do harm here?
Right.
Then put this in my office and I will know that I owe you an apology. No questions asked. I will know I owe you an apology.
Yeah.
And she taught me this very valuable lesson of intention.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, not necessarily understanding the full breadth of what that meant, but really trying to honor that request. And also I was humiliated that she recognized, my efforts of just being, she recognized, what I was doing. And so I remember times feeling pissed and saying, do I think that Sharon is really trying to piss me off? Or is she genuinely trying to understand her job?
Right.
And that statue never left my office. It never needed to, because when I would genuinely sit with that question and understand her intention, it never changed. And so over time, what's happened for me as a leader is I know I get it wrong, but my intention is always good. And so I always ask, and I always start in that place with people who are either my peers knew, my direct reports knew, and even my leaders that I report to. I try and start with, here's my intention. This is what my goal is. This is what I'd like to do. We are all in this together. However, I am not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but please know that my intention is to raise us up, not bring us down.
100%.
And so help me do that. That's
Yeah.
all I'm asking for each of you. I'm going to work as hard as you. I'm going to put in the time and the effort and all the things. But please know that my intentions are always going to be to do this. And for me, that has worked. For me, reminding myself of that intention as well, even when I deviate from the path, is helpful. So
Yeah.
having that goal, having my stated intention be united and be something that people can hang their hat on because I'm consistent about it. And I am very clear. I'm very transparent as a leader, as a person. I am who I am in the workplace as I am at home.
Yeah.
I'm not different people. I don't have to remember, oh, who am I today? I'm the same person everywhere I go. And my intention is, I hope, always good. At least that's what I strive for.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeanine, I think what you just said covered so much ground and is so rich there. And I hope people listen to it a couple times at the end of the day, because we started with identifying our value, and then how we got there and how we started operationalizing it. And what you and the other interviewees talk about is, if curiosity is my value and my intention at the end of the day, does my team know that? Am I showing up that way?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not, do they feel comfortable enough to tell me?
Right.
And I can address it in such a way.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're after, is that level, because to your point, I grew up in an environment where at any given moment things could turn and it wasn't good. And that level of inconsistency is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you take that to the inconsistency, the reason it's a problem is our brain doesn't know what to expect. So our brain is always on guard. And so
Right.
what I hear you talking about too is staying consistent. The more consistent we are as a leader, our brain knows that it is safe, right?
Exactly. That
So
psychological safety is huge. Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I think I mentioned this before. I mean, I've talked to some leaders who are like, I don't, psychological safety, like, what is it? Like, come on, really? And so I think that's the thing, is that we want to peel that label off and we want to understand what it means at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. And that's the
Right.
point of Lead with Soul
It's
too,
a
is to
very simple concept. We don't need
give
to overcomplicate it.
meaning, right? Which is be consistent, because the more consistent we are, our team and our brain knows what to expect. It's kind of like if you drive the same way every day, on a Saturday morning when you're going to the grocery store, you might drive the same way to go to work because you are in that mode, right?
Absolutely.
The brain is there. That's all
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety is being consistent at the end of the day. Your one-on-ones are consistent. Your questions are consistent. Your team knows what to expect. I don't know about you, Jeanine, but I've got my tribe. If I'm stuck on something, I literally imagine talking to somebody in my tribe and my problem is solved. I have this imaginary conversation with somebody. I'm like, so I think there's a level of consistency there, that
Mm-hmm.
the curiosity, the consistency, things of that nature. Anything to add to that?
I love the concept of figuring out what your values are and bringing those with you. Maybe having them tattooed on your inner arm.
100%.
So you can remind yourself from time to time, because truly, I think of it as our North Star.
Yeah.
And it's those things that keep us grounded and the things that keep us moving forward. And I think it's important that consistency that you speak of, so that people understand they can come to us with those things. They're going to get, I love the fact that you talk about your tribe, whether they're there or not, that you can have this invisible conversation because you know what the outcome is going to be. And so you can do it for yourself. And so as leaders, that's the thing that we bring. It's that saying about integrity is what people do when you're not watching. And so whether I'm there or not there, they know what to expect, not just of me, but of themselves.
Yeah.
And so, it's a critical part of being a leader is awakening that in somebody else, that responsibility, their own curiosity, their own desire for more. I'm reminded my master's thesis really was titled More. And it
Mm,
was about that I wanted more from myself, more from others, more from life, and I think about that in the workplace, right? When we come in, it's my job to give them more,
yeah. Yeah.
and I
Absolutely.
want that from others too, but it's also my job to get that from others.
Yes. Yes. And equip and empower them to do things on their own, which we
100%.
cannot do if we're doing command and control.
No, we
Yeah.
can't. We can't multiply ourselves if we're doing it all.
Right. Right. No, that's the recipe for burnout at the end of the
Mhm,
day.
mhm.
So one other question for you. I know, do you recall your initial reaction to Lead with Soul when I said, "Hey, I'm writing a book on Lead with Soul, and here are the 7 or 8 questions that I'd like to interview you on." Do you kind of remember, if at all, your initial
I do.
reaction? Yeah.
I do. Because here's the thing, Dionne, when you say soul, that's one of the things that you don't hear about in the
No.
workplace very often, right? So that was my first reaction was, where is she going with this? This
Yeah.
going to be tied into business practices.
Yeah.
Your questions, though, made it very clear
Yeah.
what your goal was and
Yep.
how you were stair-stepping us along to get to that place. And for some, I think it could be a very scary thing because this is my work version and this is, my home version.
Right.
And so we talked about it before, how those things need to be united.
Yes.
We can't separate our soul from who we are in the workplace. It comes with us.
Yeah.
And so while my first reaction was, where is she going with this? My second reaction after reading the very deliberate and intentional questions that you created for each of us was like, it's needed. Yeah,
Mhm.
yes, we need
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any parting words for our audience?
Not really. Well, yeah, buy your book.
Well, thank you.
Did not ask me to say that.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate that. And I think if,
Mhm.
if you are somebody who's on a journey to become a better leader, if you are a leader who wants to create your own leadership methodology to get more out of you, out of yourself, and more out of your team, and lift your organization and lift your team and lift yourself, grab a copy of this book. If you do nothing else, maybe re-listen to this discussion with Jeanine, re-listen to the other success story series, and just go from there and make it a lifelong pursuit to become the best leader that you can be, because the world needs us at the end of the day. And
Yes.
there's more of us that want to do good and be good than there are those that don't. So join our tribe, get on the wait list for the book. It's coming soon. And thank you very much, Jeanine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dionne.
You bet. All right, everybody, take care.